So yes, my name's Leo Bicknell. Most of you probably know me from AboveNet doing peering work there. I am relatively new to Aaron. I was elected to the AC at the end of last year. This presentation came out of essentially a lot of complaints at Aaron in that a lot of people have been talking in the halls about this particular topic, but no one has put forth a proposal on how to fix it. And so the AC decided at the last meeting that we needed to consolidate what the problem is and what people have been talking about and present it. And one of the things that came out of that is that we needed more input from the operator community as to what would actually be useful. So that's why I'm here today presenting to you. I certainly want to encourage anyone who's interested in the things I talk about today to look at the fall meeting, which is a joint NANOG-Aaron meeting, so you can stay on and voice your opinion on these topics. So let's talk about what the problem is. I'm sure for the first few slides, these are identical to what I gave at the Aaron meeting. They're probably all too familiar to most of the people in this room. Network and server operators want to filter unallocated IP space. And I'm limiting the talk to this topic, which may not be obvious here, but is obvious to the Aaron membership, in that Aaron can only really say whether a block is allocated or not. Aaron's never going to make a value judgment of this person's a spammer or that person, sends out malware or anything like that. So that's just not something that's going to happen. So this is really looking at taking sort of the data that you would get out of Whois as to whether or not that network is in use or not, and using it to perform these other functions. There are services that do this today. Probably many of you in this room use them. Team Kimru produces BGP feeds of bogons, they call them, unallocated space. Complete Whois produces BGP feeds and DNS zones. There's probably about 600 other people who do this if you look on Google or something like that. Many people do it internally with their own systems. And they do it for various reasons. There are network operators who filter route announcements, there's server operators who filter email. It happens at all levels. This brings up a lot of problems, though. The first one is the biggest problem we see in the Aaron community. People don't want to trust many of these sources. As good as some of these sources are, they're volunteer groups, there's no SLA, there's no contract. If your company's revenue depends on it, you're probably not going to trust them. But there's all sorts of other problems with these. There's delays, there's additional data because bogons is a very subjective term. So you're not getting pure data, and that's what a lot of people want. Another problem that occurs that I'm sure we've all seen talked about is people do filter route announcements, and often those filters don't get updated very quick. So we've all seen the complaints of, first user in a new block, I can't get anywhere, etc. It would be nice if that were automated, it were easy for all of us to update. So the question is, what can Aaron do? And that's something I want to be clear here. Again, Aaron can provide information about what has been assigned and what hasn't been assigned. And specifically in the context of Aaron, they can only provide that for blocks that Aaron controls. When you look at the IP space as a whole, there's blocks controlled by IANA/ICANN that haven't been given to anybody yet. Then there's blocks that are given to Aaron, to RIPE, to APNIC, to LACNIC, and soon AFRINIC. If you guys don't know, that's coming. So Aaron can only do a small part of that, and part of why I'm here is one of the RIRs needs to take the lead in this area. Aaron sees this as an opportunity for them to show the other RIRs what can be done. So somebody's going to have to be first. It won't be a complete solution, but hopefully we can get something that everybody wants to implement. How could we provide this? The three things that always come up at an Aaron meeting: you can put this information in BGP, you can put it in LDAP, you can put it in DNS. Find solutions, existing protocols work good. Another solution that is semi-obvious is you could create a brand new protocol. We could make Whois some kind of transaction-based protocol that would allow you to automate this in a way that parsing text output just isn't conducive to. And part of the reason I'm here is this other category. we would like input from all the smart people in this room and anywhere else who have a really good idea of how this could work and have worked with things like RFC process and going to the IETF meetings and so forth to help us figure out the right solution and document it so that it's then easier for Aaron to implement and easier for them to go to RIPE and other places and say, look, here's a document, here's how we did it, here's how everyone should do it so it works. From Aaron's point of view, there's a few problems here. It's seen a bit as a minefield because the service, obviously if people are using it for real-time filtering, has to be reliable. It has to be accurate, which for the data held by the RIR itself is not a big issue. However, there's a lot of space that was, for instance, assigned by the INTERNIC, for which Aaron today simply publishes some of the data, but in many cases doesn't really officially control it. And so it's very hard for them to guarantee accuracy. Aaron will obviously have to expend resources. Aaron is self-funding, so this is always a concern. How much will it cost? Will they have to raise fees? There is potential for liability here that doesn't, or it raises the bar for liability, I should say. Obviously, wrong data in Whois today has an effect, but if it immediately goes out to real-time filtering in all the big networks, that effect is amplified. And certainly a big concern, and one of the reasons Aaron hasn't acted, is it's viewed that any solution that we implement will probably have to be supported for forever, where forever probably means the life of IPv4, if that's the data we're talking about, which is probably forever, and then people are going to want it for any follow-on protocol as well. So there's a great impetus here to get this correct the first time. As I already said, it's very important that the other IRs have the same data. Aaron only has a subset of it. If only Aaron provided filtering data, it probably wouldn't be used by a lot of people. As I said, this is more for the Aaron audience, but Aaron has the ability here to take the lead and kind of show the path on this. It's unclear to us what other groups might be interested in taking the lead, which is part of the reason we're kind of running with this right now. But if there's a more appropriate forum, I'm very interested in hearing that as well. So the question is, how can NANOG help? For those of you who haven't been to an Aaron meeting, Aaron has an open policy process. It's based on community consensus. You don't have to be an Aaron member to propose a policy. You don't have to be an Aaron member to attend the open part of the meeting. So any of you can participate. Many of you happen to be Aaron members through your companies anyway. Probably a lot of people in this room have IP space directly from Aaron. And so this really is a group that can provide input. One of the things that I didn't realize until I got involved with Aaron is that a lot of the people who attend Aaron meetings today have a policy and administrative background. They don't touch a router. They don't touch a server. They manage IP space, IP allocations. They're worried about the resource usage, those kinds of issues. And so when you talk about would BGP or LDAP be a more efficient way of distributing the data, would it be easier to configure on your router, those sorts of things, that gets lost on a significant percentage of the people at an Aaron meeting today. And that's part of the reason we need more people with that hands-on background providing input on those issues. And again, we have the joint meetings. There was one in Chicago. There's one coming up this fall in Reston. Certainly, we encourage anybody who can stay the extra couple of days to stay on and see what's going on and provide input. What really needs to be developed is technical specifications at this point, because we're not going to move the discussion forward until there's something concrete to talk about. A lot of people can stand up and say, yes, we need filtering data, but that doesn't really get us anywhere. People need to actually present a proposal. Probably some of them will be shot down at first, but we need something concrete to talk about. And the same list of things here is the same list of concerns I gave before. This is an area where those who operate things probably know better than Aaron. When you run a Bogon route server, these are the people who attack it. This is how much bandwidth it takes. Those sorts of things can provide that kind of input. I want to point out a couple of forums. Obviously, the NANOG mailing list is always good for discussing operational issues. The ARIN side of that is PPML, the public policy mailing list. This is where open discussions occur between the meetings about various ARIN-related issues. Again, there is a joint meeting in October. And all the other RIRs, for those who aren't from the ARIN region, have their own meetings. Pretty much all of the RIRs always attend each other's meetings, so they're certainly aware of this topic. They're all thinking about it. I believe RIPE has actually looked internally at some of the ways they could solve this. And so those local forums are also appropriate. Whether or not ARIN takes the lead is one issue. Once somebody has done this, though, it's going to have to go to all of them to be important. So talking about this in other meetings and such would definitely be useful. So I believe that is it. If anyone has any questions, happy to answer them. You can see myself or Kathy, who's standing up, with any input or other things you might have after the meeting. And it looks like Kathy has something to say.
Yeah, we'd like to know if you need this. Does anybody want to say whether they need this, whether they want this, whether they care at all? We really want your feedback. So how many people would think this is useful?
I think
how many people were reading their email and not listening?
How many people are asleep?
So I think it would be more useful if you published information in the form of a route map rather than just a BGP feed. And sure, that's not real time, but it's the right way to express policy. The problem that I'm referring to is basically that someone who wants to hijack space could just advertise a longer prefix than you're advertising in your BGP feed and get some use out of it.
That's absolutely correct. The only comment I would make about that is when we look at what the ARIN membership talks about, filtering route announcements, definitely a primary goal, but there are as many, if not more, people who are interested in being able to filter this on their email server because the guy in China is never going to filter route announcements. So I don't know that that's an insurmountable hurdle. It may be in the end, if the community really wants route filtering and nothing else, it may be we produce something like that. But we're trying to make as many communities happy as we can.
Would it be a very heavyweight solution just to publish the current list of unallocated or revoked space as a route map in Cisco syntax or Juniper syntax or whatever?
It probably wouldn't be all that heavyweight. For those of you who don't know, it is possible to get bulk whois data today. That's primarily how these other services publish it. And so things could be made available in different forms. If that's what you want, propose it at an ARIN meeting, make it a policy. If people want that, that can be done.
I think there's a lack of trust, not just for Complete Whois and others, but for ARIN itself. The information that you get about these allocations, the email addresses aren't really improved. There's no trust relationships built. You don't really know the exact information you're getting. Like even shared Whois, you might know the ISP name, but getting a contact there might be difficult as well. That extends time. That makes things difficult. I guess my question is, while we might not trust Complete Whois, people are trusting Kimru and other places more and more for this type of data. And I'm not sure that people or operators want to trust ARIN with this type of data if they were to provide a service for it. And that might be a problem in the future. I don't know.
Okay. The thought I would have on that is there's a two-part problem here, right? There's providing the very simplistic data of is a block allocated or not, for which ARIN is the only source that knows that. And then there's the deeper problem of do I have a valid email address? Do I have a valid snail mail address? Which is a problem regardless of the format it's published in. There's a lot of concern about that in the ARIN community. If you look at the PPML archives, there's a lot of talk on that subject. And if you're interested, I definitely recommend you pick that up because it quickly becomes a very thorny problem. And the largest problem actually is for space that ARIN doesn't control. It's legacy internet space that they're not allowed to change for reasons above them. And a lot of that blame goes to them because they run the Whois server that shows it to you. But certainly look at PPML. There's a lot of talk on that subject. But that's good input.
Thank you.
Rüdiger Volk. You mentioned the question of how to publish data, and well, okay, I'm seeing problems how to deal operatively with information about bad space. However, I would strongly suggest all of the RIRs to consider using RPSL and the IRR to publish the address space that they actually have allocated, and you mentioned you know operatively what you have assigned, and it's a pity that we have the RPSL and the IRR, and that data is not available and cannot be used in generating policies, and it should be really easy.
I think that's a great suggestion, and the best thing I can offer is that you should submit it via the public policy mailing list as a policy change, that they should publish that. Again, Aaron works on community consensus. If that's what everybody wants, that's what will happen.
We're also going to take these comments back with us to the next meeting, so it's really great if you want to come to the meeting, but if you can't make it, some of this, the route map and what you said, we'll also take that back with us.
Steve Gill, Team Cumry. Just want to make a couple clarifications. The formats that the data is available in, as far as the data that comes from Team Cumry, currently you can retrieve that through various forms, HTTP, it's published in DNS, email, RADB, RIPE object as well, and a couple of the formats that don't come to mind. But we try to make it as available as possible in various formats. So our goal is to make it as widespread as possible. So I guess what I'm saying is the amount of data, I don't think there's one format that solves all the problems. Some people like BGP feeds, others prefer to filter based on a web form or just text that they can download. So the types of formats and the completeness therein would be very helpful. One comment I'd like to reiterate is the accuracy of anything other than the major Netblocks that are considered bogans today is very skeptical. The reason why we stick to the basics, what Aaron publishes, is that other formats that we've seen, there's been a lot of discrepancy in data and knowing that that's accurate. And if people are starting to filter on data that's not completely accurate, they're going to have problems. So what we'd like to see is some way of verifying that 100% with 100% effectiveness, that there are absolutely no false positives in the data that's published in blocks that are allocated. And what we've seen today is there are discrepancies between the databases, and that's why we haven't gone that route. The bogans that are published are 100% accurate based on your data.
Thank you.
Hi, John Curran, independent consultant, acting president of Aaron. Leo, great job on the presentation. I just want to point out one thing, which is with respect to Aaron and the other RIRs. To the extent that people here feel strongly that something should be done here, or feel strongly that something shouldn't be done here, or feel that there's a certain format that's useful, that really can be solved by this community and Aaron to come up with an answer. And if it turns out that it's useful, the other RIRs are very quick to follow good practices. And if it turns out it's not, it won't get worried. It won't get picked up. I guess what I'm trying to say is we don't need a unified field theory of how to get this done. We need a working way for Aaron to get it done, or if it should be done at all. And if it's useful, the registries are very good at coordinating with one another. It will quickly replicate. So the extent that you do have an opinion, please do come find members of the AC who just spoke, or speak on the public policy mailing list, because we're trying to make sure that if we do something, it's useful to this community, and by the same token, we don't want to do anything at all if no one cares about it. So I ask input. It's very important to us. Thank you.
I think that covers everybody.
Thank you, Leo.
Sure.